So with all the bullshit going on between the country and worldwide, this is a pretty fitting time to make this video. And what's this video about? Outside factors, how they affect your trading. Coffee right here. Hope y'all are ready for this shit. So, what are outside factors that will affect market, affect your trading? It's a good thing to do your own research. Hop on ChatGPT, maybe valuable, fucking dependable news source that's not fucking biased, so not like Fox, not like CNN, none of that. It's always important. You know, you can't be having them chop up speeches, this and that. Um, and I would say it's honestly a requirement when you're trading, which is an economical thing. You need to have some involvement in politics and have some understanding of it. I mean, even TJR does to an extent in that fucker. Um, but you really, it comes down to being free thinking, and you have to understand how outside, like major news events, presidential elections, elections for other countries, depending on pair specificness, all of that. And just how outside events will affect your trading. You have to understand that because obviously there's news, but this shit isn't just all on the charts. Like the patterns aren't going to be enough. You know, you have to understand exactly why this shit's going on, especially when you get to fucking long-term investing and swing trading, because I had to touch my portfolio other than just adding money to it. I had to touch my long-term investment portfolio and readjust it for the first time today in the last 6 months because of these major economical events like government shutdown, panic selling, people proposing that there's an AI bubble, all of that. And this is going to be a long one, so strap the fuck in because this is going to be a trading video and some other more important topics. I would argue that translates that even more than just trading. But so no, understand that shit. Understand that if one of the best investors in my state and the top 1% of long-term investors worldwide, not including banks, and top 10% of private, not private retail, top 10% of worldwide traders, myself, if they are losing 10% of their portfolio in 1 week, we probably have an issue with the economy. Let's think here. I do this shit. I shouldn't be losing this much. So let's get that shit out of the way right now. So last video, we kind of already went over the panic selling and why that's an issue. So this video will use all of these examples. So if something is bad for market or bad for a location of market or anything like that, if it's bad for the country you live in, the country that your pair's related to, the country that you're fucking, goddamn, anything like that, or if it's international, then it's even worse. Will this affect day trading? Yes. But day trading is about making a prediction, not about whether it goes up. So that doesn't really matter, you know? Might make it more volatile. Like even GJ was very volatile today. I had a ton of swings. So let's get that out of the way. That's going to be crazy for it. Long-term investing, fucking horrible. Swing trading and long-term investing, horrible. When you have shit like this going on, drastic changes, because you got to think, even if it's a good change, people are going to panic sell. So let's get that out of the way. Fucking all of this shit. Just it's fucking nuts. Like if you're trading, especially if you're trading an American index right now, you better be a pretty damn good trader. You can't be walking into these markets with any fucking intro level shit. This year's already been fucking crazy for trading. One of the most difficult years to learn this shit. And then we just had a government shutdown. And then we just had the trading capital of the world, New York City, taken over by a socialist. Now, I might get canceled for this shit. This might be a fucking controversial claim, which as an American, this shouldn't be a controversial claim. But socialism isn't good for the fucking stock market. And it's the stupidest shit I've ever seen. Let's be real here. But no, socialism is horrible for the fucking market. God damn. Let's get that straight out of the way. So, whatever, outside events, you already know this shit. I already explained it. You know, a good amount of this is comprehensible without any idea of what I'm talking about because it's common sense. But, see here. So, I guess we'll just go right over to the fact of the matter, the topic, you know, the actual event that's occurring right now. So we have this shit, and this is going to be a political video, I'm not even going to lie, because politics and economics go hand in hand, and you have to understand both. You don't have to understand both, but it'll help you. So, let's think here. America, we're in a shutdown. Horrible. Pretty damn large impact on long-term investments, shit like that. American indexes, it's going to change. GBP, JPY, I haven't really, even with Japan and America being partners, and with like USD, GBP and GBP USD, even with that, I haven't experienced too much of a fallout on the Forex side of things with GBP, JPY, so that's good. I have some stability in life right now. But you understand that, and then we also have to understand what's going on in New York. I'm a New York resident. Not a flex at all right now. So, with this New York City election going on, where a literal socialist, I can't stress that word enough, socialist, Mamdani, however you say it, I don't give a fuck. I don't care about pronouncing his name right because he's gonna fuck the markets. But a literal socialist is taking over in New York City. He is the mayor. It's set in stone. He has won the election. So, in terms of weird ass markets right now, New York City, top, New York, mid-ground, America, kind of last stage of it. At least in terms of what's affecting me and what's most likely affecting you, if you're watching this video. So, if you live in New York City right now, you are cooked, brother. Like, I'm not even gonna lie. I would just, if you have enough money saved up, I would just fucking move. If you live in New York, it's maintainable. I mean, if you're trading like a European pair or something like that, that's fine. America, not a crazy, like, big time outreach. But New York City, let's focus right on this. So, New York City's shot, if I'm going to be honest with you. The economy is shot. Mamdani, not even getting politically here, I might make another video on the politics behind it, but just thinking, like, economically here, get ready for this shit. And this shit's gonna affect me, someone that doesn't even live in New York City. So, Mamdani, there's a kind of key points of his little fucking campaign, which I don't understand how the fuck he got elected in. New York City, y'all are failing. You guys are failing as Americans. Electing a socialist? Really? But no. So, $30 minimum wage. What's that gonna do? Skyrocket the cost of living. God damn, dude, you don't even have to take a high school economics class to understand that shit. If you raise minimum wage, especially to $30 an hour, that is nearly, at least around where I'm from, that's nearly double. That's pretty much double the minimum wage. So, let's get that shit straight. $30 minimum wage? Small businesses are dead. Small businesses can't afford that shit, let's be real here, especially product-based ones. And I run a business. I know this shit. I deal with this shit on a daily basis. So, fucking done for. That's going to increase taxes. What else do we want to do? Socialist principles. We want to have government-run stores, government-run housing. Okay. How do you think New York City is going to come up with the money to provide that shit? Taxing the fuck out of the people. If you're one of these people bitching about how you can't live off a $1,000 weekly salary in New York City before this shit happened, how do you think you're going to live off of a $300 weekly salary? Get the fuck out of here. So, first off, socialism and its principles, and this shit with Mamdani, is literally the most, between this and communism and all that, this is gonna inhibit your chances of success drastically. If everyone's free, if you are only provided with your housing and your food, and then you get a little bit of fucking maybe a few $100 to actually spend on taking risks and investments and shit, success will never find you. That's not enough. So that shit's already covered. And then let's just think here. So Mamdani's already begging for money from like his supporters, so that's fucking nuts. So we have that shit going on. Like I said, New York City wants all this money, all this shit. They plan on doing all these big changes. There's even more that I just don't feel like looking at right now. But he wants to do all this shit with what money? There's no money. So what's going to happen? It's not just going to be New York City taxes. Statewide, New York taxes are going to increase. It's been going on for decades. It's been going on before I was born. Probably been going on before my parents were born. So let's get that down there. From an economic standpoint, it's ridiculous. It is completely and utterly ridiculous. So let's think of that. And then let's also think, this is another thing. This is another reason why taxes are going to go through the roof. Mamdani. So first off, let's get this set right here. And if you want to fact check me, you can literally pull up Google and see that everything I'm saying is facts. I might slip up once or twice, but you can see every single thing that I am saying right now is a fact. So roughly 50% of New York City's like income and shit that they make from taxes comes from the top 1%, the best of the best, the richest of the rich. That's how graduated income tax works. If you don't believe that shit, then click off this video and don't ever watch another one of my videos because it's common sense. It's basic economics. I knew this shit before I was even involved with economics. So, coffee down. Shit, I'm out of my coffee now. But no, so if 50% of that income, 50%, that's a fucking humongous number. If I lost 50% of my portfolio, I'd not be happy. If I made 50% of my portfolio, I'd be ecstatic. So they get that much from this top 1%. And now they want to tax this top 1% even more money. And that's causing, it's already been talked about, that is causing this top 1% to move to other states, such as Florida, and more specifically, southern Florida and Miami. So, if you're making 50% of your money from taxes from the top 1%, and then you give that top 1% an incentive to leave, and then they all leave, how much money did you just lose for the city and from taxes? 50% of that money you just lost. So, New York City can't pay for this shit, all these plans he has, as it is. And now they're going to lose 50% of that, so they're even more bankrupt. So what's that going to do? Like, what's the true extent of this fallout? So, New York City, most likely, depending on how quickly we get Mamdani out of there, New York City is most likely going to fall off as the like economic leader of the world, like with all these markets, all of that, like with how strong the trading is, how many prop firms, how many big banks, all that. That's number one. Number two is, and this shit's where it actually can start affecting me. Hopefully not too much with GJ and shit, but so we're really hoping that the bias that all these big banks and shit are going to move down to Florida is true. We need these places because New York City's already dead. Like realistically, the economy is done for. So if any of this goes through, which the first stage of this going through has happened with him getting elected, but no. So where it really affects me and what really kind of grinds my gears is if these big banks, if a majority of them move anywhere not on the East Coast, New York session is a myth. New York session does not exist anymore. I want that to get through your head. So even if you don't give a fuck about the politics, even if you don't live in New York, if you trade, which if you're watching this video, my whole channel is about trading, so I'm assuming you do. So if you trade during New York session, this is going to affect you. Because if you got to think about it, if these big banks and prop firms and shit are active at different times on different time zones, then all of a sudden that like whatever 8 o'clock to like 10:30, maybe 12, most of the time 11:30, that 8 o'clock to 11:30 window is gone. It doesn't exist anymore. So and especially if we get even more variety, a quarter of them move over to California, a quarter of them move over somewhere on fucking this time zone, a quarter on this time zone, a quarter of them stay here. All of this volatility is going to be spread out among the entire New York session. So before, where it was clear cut, and we have this like power window from 8 to 11:30, and then for the rest of the day, for the most part, it's like a slump. That's going to be way different. We're going to have volatility at random ass times during the day. And sure, it might stabilize over time, and you might learn it over time, but that's a few years taken off of your life that you can't rely on trading for. So let's get that one in our heads. Let's get that one in our brains. So, and volatility at market will never be the same if that happens. Let's get that one through as well. Because what makes strategies work and what makes market predictable? Volatility being the same or similar, or volatility at least existing. Crazy volatility isn't going to exist if different banks and different prop firms are getting out at different times. So let's get that one straight. And that's really how it dramatically affects me personally as a New Yorker with the taxes, and then as a trader with market times getting set up. I haven't even checked NASDAQ in the S&P, and I don't want to because I can only imagine. But no. So that's really that's what's kind of confirmed as to what can happen from this. None of that's really speculation from what I've heard and from what I've seen. So I think this is just this New York City event is horrible for market, and specifically horrible for American market. Now, if this truly does carry through and we actually get the banks and prop firms moving to different time zones, there is one other option as an American trader, and that is trading on either Asia session or London session. And if you're on the Eastern Coast, it's gonna suck, but London session is really the only reliable session to trade on. At least for my pair and for Forex, because I've traded on it before. And Asia session, not really predictable. There's not really enough volatility to make a good amount of money trading. But what sucks about London session, if you're on the East Coast, you will have to be staying up from 2 a.m. to 5 a.m. to trade London session, which sucks. That's the exact middle of the night. That doesn't, it's not like you just stay up 2 hours later or get up 2 hours earlier. That's the exact middle of the night, which is insanely inconvenient. But so that's kind of from the New York City standpoint and New York standpoint, how this affects us. Then from a greater standpoint right now, not gonna lie, the global economy is in a absolutely horrible position, to be honest with you. And that's just the truth of it. I don't want to get too political here, so I won't say the causes of it, but maybe in the next video I will. But I want to keep this strictly economical. So, that's basically it. New York City's torched. New York, pretty bad. Overall, New York session, so American traders are in a pretty difficult position. Depending on how Mamdani's or not presidency, but his mayoral position goes, how his policies are carried out, how big banks react to those policies, how traders react to those policies. That's going to be something to see. It's definitely, I'll put it this way. The best case scenario is nothing changes. There is no best case scenario. The best case scenario from Mamdani's mayor career here in New York City is that neutrality is ensured and that nothing changes. That kind of shows you how bad of an event this is. So, yeah, I mean, I'm like not a fan of this at all. Between this and like the panic sellers, it's an absolutely horrible time for market, to be honest with you. Um, it's really it. Like, it's just a horrible time for market, a horrible time for American economy, more so than global economy, but it's also a pretty poor time for global economy. And yeah, I mean, if you stayed this long, congrats, but there's really no good news I have for you. It's kind of just realism that you have to like be aware of. Like right now we're going into a weird time and day trading, not so bad, especially if you're on a forex pair that doesn't have to do with America, or at least doesn't have too much dependency on America. Um, but long-term investing, horrible position. Swing trading, horrible position right now, and I don't know when it'll get better. Um, it's really it. Just hope for the best.